BWI Live. I'm Thomas Reincar. Nate Bauer joining me today. Sean Fitz joining us in just a moment for what is going to be the start of our Penn State football preview for fall camp. Nittany Lions, we have 3 Tuesdays left, Nate Bauer. 3 Tuesdays left before Penn State starts camp on July 30th. So, time to get into our camp previews. We're going to be previewing battles, etc., etc. Of course, yesterday Chuck Losey and the strength staff opened up the weight room. So we're talking about that today as well, plus whatever is on your mind in the chat. Please join us live and give us your thoughts. We'll be talking to you throughout the show. If you're listening on replay or if you're listening on the podcast version, you could also give us your thoughts. It'll be less useful, but no, in spirit, we're hanging out. So, Nate, what's on your mind to start? How you doing?
I'm great. How are you? I'm a little upset.
I'm not super happy today, but that's neither here nor there.
Technical difficulties? Is that the issue?
Yeah. So I've got to decide what part of this equipment that I've got to replace, and I just upgraded my home Wi-Fi. I finally got mesh routers, so things stopped dropping off of my system, and now my camera has stopped working. So, I had to do a triple-double backup plan to start the show, which is why we're a little bit late. But, yeah, that's not what we're here to talk about. What's going on in the mind of Nate Bauer? What's up with you?
Not much. We just finished our preseason magazine. So can I start with a shout-out to that? Is bluewhiteonline.com. If you have not ordered yours, you should. If you're a subscriber to the site, we will have some overlap there. There will be a couple of stories that appear in the magazine that also appear on the site. But on the whole, it is a great resource. If you're like a tangible person, right? You like to hold. I know.
Tactile.
Yeah, the kids don't even know, what a magazine is anymore. But it's good. It's going to be good. I wrote some good stuff that I plan to put on the website as well. So you'll see it one way or the other.
Sounds good. The chat wants to know, Ryan Sheard says, how do I get a purple king? So here on YouTube, everyone's changing stuff. And at least they're doing it now, right before July, as opposed to, in the middle of the season, which is great. So some things on the back end have changed for us here. But I think Ryan is talking about here in the live chat. Steven has a little logo, which you can't see here on our streaming software, but on the YouTube software, he's got a little purple indicator with a crown. And I believe that is #1 fan status. YouTube is now ranking you all.
Oh,
Analytics are everywhere. Everyone's being judged on everything. This is just like football, right, Nate? Everyone's being judged on everything. So Steven is the #1 fan in the chat, and now Ryan is #2. My goodness, this is going to cause some pressure here in the chat. How about that?
Compete in everything you do, right? Heard that somewhere.
Yeah, nothing we've taken true to heart here on the YouTube channel. So, Nate, we're in this sticky situation.
Okay.
Because I asked you yesterday during the lift, hey, what do you notice? What did you say?
Yeah, no, everybody looks good.
Everyone looks good. Yeah.
They look great.
This is the part of the show where I'd have a conversation with Fitz about, hey, who stood out, who looked like what?
Listen.
So, I didn't want to put the pressure on you.
No.
I believe you have more insight than you're letting on. But
no, I don't.
Fitz being late kind of throws a wrench in the show's mechanics to start today.
I'll do the asking in that case. Right, because we saw some people, right? I don't think look. The most black and white reading of these events, right? So let's set the table here a little bit. Yesterday, Penn State held an open weightlifting session, right? They are coming into the end of their summer access period, which they call OTAs. When they're kind of training for preseason, right? I mean, they're just getting their bodies in the right place for preseason camp, which, disclaimer, begins on July 30th. Unofficial start. It's official. Of preseason camp is July 30th. So it's coming. It's going to get here quickly. And so Penn State football allowed reporters into the Lash building weight room yesterday. Saw a bunch of people, a bunch of guys working out. It wasn't the full team, but a bunch of guys getting some work in the afternoon, getting some post workout recovery meals and shakes and all that good stuff in as well. And then we obviously had an opportunity to talk to Chuck Losey and I want to make sure that I don't mess this up. Andrew Nelson.
Title.
I know, director of performance science, which is all the kabuki, right? But like not.
Hey now.
No, I'm saying it's like it's legit. It was actually. I will talk about that later, and I will set you up to ask me about it because the West Coast trip, right, last year was such a major point of emphasis, really from James Franklin from before the season started until that USC game was over, about all that went into it. And so it was kind of interesting to hear some of his thoughts on that. He was a big resource for Franklin on that trip. But no,
science works and how the body works and how all those things are interconnected into performance. Which I as a sports nerd, I don't think people even realize the depths of what lifting and conditioning are for an athlete. Like, we talk about their performance on the field. That is the 1% of their life that they're working up towards, but probably even more than football, like drilling and making sure you're good at your specific craft. Football players are expert weightlifters. Like, they are unbelievably well-tuned machines when it comes to the sports science of lifting. And I enjoy seeing Chuck Losey and Andrew Nelson talk about that. I enjoy watching really good lifters lift a ton of weight. And for, we'll be releasing some of the highlights of that this week on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Not really a max testing day, as Chuck Losey talked about. So there weren't the viral videos of somebody squatting 600 pounds this year. We're not going to be getting those things. But I thought it was a super cool insight into what they were doing to prepare for training camp. So that was one of the things I noticed as far as the differences in what we saw in March versus what we saw this week. And I've outlined that a couple of times at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com of the differences and why these things are important, which you can go check out. And by the way, that will cost you just $1 for the first week of access. So make sure you check that out for us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So Nate, I'll sit you up now.
Yeah,
I do want to talk about you gotta reverse ping pong and you gotta reverse Uno me at some point so we can talk about the lifting part. But Andrew Nelson in his conversation with you, I didn't have a chance to listen to any of what he had to say. So what were the highlights that you found interesting about what Andrew Nelson talked about with the media yesterday?
Yeah, while I'm talking, you have to raise your microphone level because the chat is telling us that you are not loud enough.
Yeah, this is another one of those things where they reset my entire setup here. When we went with Rivals, when we made the official merger, stuff got weird. So also, and StreamYard.
I'm just saying,
a whole bunch of things. So
I'm going to talk, so you take care of that while I'm talking, and then I think we'll be in a good place. Yeah, the funny thing about Andrew Nelson yesterday was for a guy who, his job is to really dig into the details and all of the different elements that, set them up for success or not. And he was talking, I asked him, right, obviously about the West Coast trip and whether or not they needed to do as much of a deep dive. He said that he spent like a month of last offseason preparing for that trip and what his recommendations would be, based on the fact, and something that James Franklin repeated quite a few times, that the data shows East Coast teams going to the West Coast to play, it doesn't matter, college, pro, whatever, East Coast teams that go West lose a lot. The data is there that says that they're right. It's not nothing. But what he said, and was kind of great, was, when he really dug into the numbers, the thing that he found was that a lot of times the better team won. Right. So I know. Go figure. Right. Like it wasn't as though there was this rash of fantastic teams from the East Coast that went West and we're getting beaten by bottom dwellers. Like that wasn't the reality. It was, oh, well, if you have like typically the better team is the one that wins, which, he mentioned how, especially in his field, you have this tendency of going so far into the weeds that you try to like justify how smart you are by well, there's all this stuff that you can look at and prove something. Yeah, but also the better team, the team that has more really good football players than the other team tends to win. Right. And so they did all that work last offseason. It sets the foundation. It's something that they can tweak. It's something that they'll obviously continue to examine what their approach is going to be this year. Obviously, they play at UCLA on October 5th. I think it is October 4th. But front and center, they went out Thursday last year. They'll probably go out Thursday this year as opposed to Friday travel for a typical Big Ten road game. But outside of that, it's probably going to be pretty much the same approach. They liked how they did it last year. They liked the plan that they settled on. They liked the blueprint that they have, and they'll likely continue that this time around.
Gotcha. Joining us now, John Fitz from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. He is here to discuss the looks like game. And Fitz, I'm throwing you right into the deep end of the pool. What was your takeaway from the looks like game yesterday when we were checking out Penn State's lift before training camp?
Looks like Penn State's got some large offensive linemen, and they are coming along on the defensive line as well. But man, some of those guys in there, I mean, I'm talking like the younger guys that we're not even going to see this year, like Owen Alasini is just a complete departure from what he was a year ago. I mean, it's crazy to watch Chuck Losey and their staff, who is a tremendous staff, do their work. It's pretty ridiculous, to be honest with you. But just looking all over the place, you've got guys that just kind of stand out in a different way than they've stood out in the last 10 years. From the size perspective. So encouraged to see that. Obviously, the expectations are high to go along with that. So I'm looking forward to seeing those guys kind of go with it. And it's interesting to see some development from some older guys, because usually when we're talking about, giving these kind of updates, we're watching the redshirt freshman who went, Malachi Williams went from 215 to 250. Those are the kind of things that are just like eye popping. But you get a guy like the first thing we saw when I walked in yesterday was Drew Shelton throwing up a power clean. That guy looks ready to go. So encouraged by that. Obviously, as we said, the expectations are high, and they should be. I think it's a good group coming back, but at the same time, it's pretty physically impressive there on the offensive line.
Yeah, that was you mentioned the freshman, and that was, I think, what struck me is that, you got some guys on the defensive line who are kind of grown into their bodies, and maybe some of those guys are here, in May as opposed to being here in January. But Malachi Goodman, Owen Alasini, some of these young offensive linemen, Michael Troutman, wow, they are all large human beings, and not just from a size perspective, but like filled out, look like advanced football players. Like the offensive line from beginning to end is a group, like just as Fitz said, that just looks really impressive when you're standing next to them. Not that they all don't, as somebody who is a normal sized human being, they're all very impressive athletes. I also thought it was funny, Gabe Nwosu does lift with the offensive line, like he was lifting with Drew Shelton. So that what we've joked about, maybe he could fill in a snap. I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out.
I bet he would disagree with you, but
yeah. So Fitz, do me a favor and give me your best 60 seconds about beer.
Oh, I like beer, especially Anti-Fragile beer. Anti-Fragile Brewing in downtown State College on Calder Way, developing quite a reputation, mostly among the student population for their cheesesteaks. Uncle John's are becoming a late night staple in State College, and they're really freaking good. As I said several times on this, not just the ad read, but in real life, I say that as well. So get down to Anti-Fragile, check out the best beer in State College, check out the wonderful things that they've been doing since they moved there in April 2022. It's not just beer, it's mixed drinks, it's kombucha. You can go there and just have a good time, meet some nice people, strike up a conversation at the bar, and really have yourself a day, really. they're also a prime sponsor of the Happy Valley Brewers Fest, which is coming up this week. Is your last week to get tickets, so recommend you do so if you're holding out for whatever reason. It's gonna be a great day in Happy Valley on Saturday. So we really appreciate the support of Anti-Fragile. Go down, have a beer, have a couple beers. I don't know, but Uber home if you do. And it's a wonderful spot, and we appreciate their support, and hopefully they appreciate us coming in there and drinking their beer.
Oh no, you're muted.
Yeah, now you're just completely gone, T. Frank. You are. I'll tell you what, we saw those guys lifting yesterday. They're ready for the season. I'm not sure you are, buddy. So, so it's just us now.
Okay, hey, Fitz,
how's it going, buddy?
What did you see yesterday? Tell me who looked good.
Who looked good? Well, that's the thing. I'm coming away doing a looks test, and a couple of guys really popped. And as T. Frank mentioned, it was O-line, D-line, linebackers, and Gabe Nwosu was the lifting groups. I mentioned the offensive line already.
Wait a second. Riley Thompson was in there too.
Okay. I missed him. I missed Riley.
There were some specialists.
I saw Ryan Barker has got a wonderful mullet working. So that's good. Going back to the defensive line, I mentioned Malachi Williams earlier. We know that Penn State's depth, and I would say I don't even want to say situational pass rushing, but we were looking at Max Granville to fill that role for Penn State this year, and now it's not going to happen with the injury. But Jalen Harvey and Malachi Williams are two guys squarely on the radar for guys that can come in and do that, and I think they look pretty fantastic. I mean, I just kept going back to Williams, just thinking about him and it's almost like an Adisa Isaac sort of glow up, going from 215 to 250. Big and I don't want to call him square, but like he's broad. He's a really, really good looking prospect. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table for that 3, 4, 5, 6 slot, which I think is still pretty open when you're talking about defensive end behind Denai Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher, who actually we don't talk about Zariah Fisher enough. So if we do that at some point, we should probably do that because there's so much excitement with the young guys, and Chuck Losey kind of echoed this yesterday when he was asked about the young defensive ends, and highlighted Chaz Coleman, Daniel Jennings is somebody we'll talk about, but Zariah Fisher continues to be a guy that internally like sky high hopes for, and I understand the apprehension given the injury history that he has. You tear your knee up twice, it's going to come with the territory. But at the same time, like Penn State's really excited for what he can bring to the table, and they're not expecting. I think some people are seeing Denai and then drop off, and then Fisher. I'm not sure how big that drop off actually will be.
Let's get to some of the things that Chuck Losey had to say yesterday in Between the Lines.
They have both gotten reps with runs.
Now, normally when we do Between the Lines, there's some parsing of words. There's some important interpretations because we're usually talking about what head coach James Franklin has to say. Chuck Losey a little more straightforward. He does not as much of the reading between the lines, but this is a great quote segment. So let's talk about the thing that I think most people are interested in, guys, and that is the transfer players and Chuck Losey's assessment of them. Some interesting things he had to say, I think, especially about Trevor Pena, but that's what we're going to get to first is his comments about Trevor Pena, receiver from Syracuse, and Amari Campbell, linebacker from North Carolina.
I mean, priority number one is just to get them comfortable within our team and getting them fit into our culture. That's always going to be priority number one for us. We knew who they were from an athlete standpoint, athletically. We knew what their capabilities were, both of them. Pena, I knew that we could make jumps in speed and his ability to be dynamic on the field. I watched his film. I saw what his baseline measurables were when they first came in, and we've been able to increase his outputs on everything this summer, so I'm really excited to see where he tests out next week. I think he's going to test really well. But and then the same thing with Amari. Amari was in a little bit different situation, combo position player, probably came in a little bit more under conditioned than Pena. So what I'm excited about Amari is that he's been able to put 5-6 pounds on since he's been here, but he's also been able to drop points off of his body fat percentage. So again, it goes back to movement efficiency and economy for our guys. I'm happy with both of them.
I guess I was a little surprised by that, Fitz, the comment about Trevor Pena and having so much room to grow from a speed perspective. What do you take from that, given we've heard this conversation before about some receivers coming to Penn State. But Chuck Losey, I mean, wouldn't say that unless there was some validity to it. So I guess I found that interesting. What did you think?
Yeah, I think there's different levels here. You're looking at a guy coming from the ACC, and that's going to be, not a big drop off because some of the most athletic players we've ever seen have come from the ACC. But like you're looking at different levels on film of guys that can hang with him, and he was always more of a quickness rather than speed guy. Yeah. So I think he's just talking straight line speed. I mean, there's no absence of straight line speed in that room. Like that's kind of the thing that we keep going back to. But there also wasn't last year, and there wasn't 2 years ago. Like these guys have some 4.3s in them, they have some 4.4s in them for the most part. I think everybody, south of Fleming and Denmark last year were sub 4.5 guys. So like you've got speed as one talking point, but also not the only talking point, if that makes sense. So I'm curious to see what that does to his game, as he is a quickness in and out of the slot type guy. Devontae Ross could probably say the same thing for him. I think I saw, and this is kind of ridiculous, but looking at the college football 26 ratings, I think it had Ross as Penn State's fastest receiver. He's not. I mean, that is not really kind of how that room is built. But at the same time, speed is overrated in that aspect. Like you need speed, obviously. I mean, you need to be athletic, but you're talking about running a 40-yard dash in a straight line, and that's not necessarily how you run a route for most people. Amari Evans was really good at it, but like that's pretty much how that worked out. So, I would say that the added development of speed for Pena could be huge, but also probably a talking point that we would probably spend too much time on if it were a regular fleshed out offseason. The issue here with Pena is, so last year when Nate was trying to stuff it down your throat that Julian Fleming wasn't going to be it, like he had a spring practice and we found that out. Trevor Pena, all the feedback, all the things that we've heard about him so far come from workouts, come from 7-on-7, and there's only so much you can take away from that. So not trampling on him or tamping or whatever we might say. It's more of this guy is still a mystery because he hasn't put on the pads yet for Penn State. I think that's what they're going off of with this feedback.
Nate, what did you think of the conversation about transfers here and Amari Campbell, a young guy who Penn State, I guess, what are you expecting of him? Given what Chuck Losey just said, it sounds like there's still a lot of physical development for him to do, and somebody who just got here in May or whatever it may be. What's your thought on where he kind of fits into the defensive picture for Penn State?
I think, and I'm not sure I'm prepared to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think people anticipating Dom DeLuca to get bounced by him are probably not right. Like, I think Dom DeLuca is going to play a lot of football and probably start with Tony Rojas. So we'll see. But like I think in those terms that Chuck Losey framed it, it's like, okay, well, there's ample room for development there for Amari Campbell. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to play out, including and especially. There are some positions where it's difficult to get a read on the player that they are in person until you actually start tackling people, right? And including to a certain extent that wide receiver conversation that Fitz just had, start having to make contested catches, right? Instead of being fast on air, which is fine. And there are things that you can learn from that, but if I had to identify, and this is not in any way brilliance, like what was the issue? Like what was the memorable thing last season for Penn State's receivers? It wasn't that they never, that they had drops, right? Like that didn't stand out. It was, like when it was one-on-one and the 50-50 ball, they got it literally taken out of their hands.
Yeah.
Right.
And something that's
based
been
on
a problem
physicality
for this group for a while. Like that's the interesting thing is that's been a problem for Penn State going back to like 2022, where they you have your Parker Washingtons who are good at that thing, but overall I think there's been a lack of that trust in the receiver to go up and get the football in those situations. And I guess, Fitz, I want to clarify what you're talking about with speed, because are you saying that Penn State is fast enough given the receivers they have in terms of the transfers that I think a lot of us are expecting to be a part of the equation? Those top 3 guys, and you can throw in Lee and Clifford there. Of generally, Penn State went out and got these guys for a reason. That there's enough there that when you get separation, you can make something happen, or that speed is not the thing that you're focused on. Because I do think it is important. I do think if you look at Trevor Pena and you look at the way he separated at the line of scrimmage and then lost that separation downfield, I guess that's why I was interested in this. Of if he could be that guy, that changes to me like the application of his skill set. But I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were talking about when you meant talking about speed as an important factor. Is it that we're overemphasizing that, or that you don't think it's as important in terms of being a productive receiver and getting open?
I think the latter. I think if you when you go out and you run a 40-yard dash, there's nobody in the last 5 yards trying to make you change your direction slightly or trying to make you catch a ball, really. Like you're looking at that, the first 35 yards, Penn State's receivers last year would have been fine with it. Like they're, running fast. That's what they did. Then the contested catches come in and all of a sudden it's very different. So I think that's what I'm looking at. And that's where a guy like Kyron Hudson is probably more important than most. I mean, this guy is a 4.5, mid 4.5s, 4.6 guy. Like he's not particularly fast in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, I think we saw, especially in the spring game, that he can find pockets and he can be strong and he can make some strong catches. And that's not necessarily going to contribute or result in 9 catch, 160 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game, but also, 4 for 60 is a really good output. Like that's something that they sorely needed. I think Wallace got there sometimes last year, but that's something they sorely needed out of that group. So I that's what I'm looking at. And I think the speed conversation, because of what we've seen in the last couple of years when it was there, but it also didn't matter. Like, I think that's really what we're looking at here. So I think we're on the same page in terms of all that happening, but it used to be when I was in college and playing Madden, you'd find the 99 speed guy and he could just run by everybody, right? Like that, because that's how those games were calibrated 20 years ago. And now all of a sudden, it's not so much about the speed rating, it's about everything else. And I keep going back to video games, and I hate the video game aspect of people following college football like that. But at the same time, it proves the point that
right?
The evolution of not only the video games, but also the position makes you do different things than running a straight line faster than everybody else. So I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, holistically, they did not have the composite skills to execute the assignment last year. From the speed did not matter in terms of the ability for them to produce. It's just interesting. We have seen the opposite in other situations, though, when you don't have the ability to separate is not purely about speed, but it is interesting having the trying to find the right way to talk about all of these different traits when they're all important at the highest level. When we're talking about against the best teams where Penn State wants to go in this season of anticipation. So,
right. Well, and going back to what Nate said about Amari Campbell is the same thing. Is like he didn't have a spring practice, so they don't know how he tackles. They don't know how he puts his instincts into play. So you're looking at 2 unknowns that you think something, but 2 relative unknowns. So when we're talking about Penn State's linebacker group, we're talking about filling out a group of a 2 deep of 4, maybe 5 guys. You throw Speckett in there. So you've got, I think Rojas and DeLuca are going to start, but also Keon Wiley is a guy yesterday. You looked around and was like, who's this defensive end? Like this is, and he's a little bit shorter than those other guys, but at the same time, it's fascinating to see his development. And if he can get comfortable with that knee, he can be a productive player. Speckett can be a productive player. So it's all about filling that sort of pool of depth. And I think they've done a nice job of that. I think the top level talent, like I very high on Tony Rojas, if he can, stay healthy and tackle because he can stay healthy, that's a big deal. But I think that's a decent group. And I'm not sure that we were saying that in the spring as we kind of, plucked out our fingernails when Tamir Robinson, transferred to USC. So that's kind of where I'm at with those 2 guys. It's just like you're only going to know so much until the pads go on. And of course, we're going to talk for the next couple of weeks before the pads go on about and speculate about all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, you're going by what you think about these players. And that's even true for Devontae Ross and Kyron Hudson. I mean, it's kind of the reality of the situation. And then you take another leap and you get them in games. And then you take another leap and Oregon comes to town in week 4. So there are so many different levels at play here. And if Penn State can iron out and get those guys to make those plays in the big games, that can make a big difference.
So part of the conversation yesterday, and a part of, I think, a big, I don't want to say preview because that's obviously what we're doing. A big factor of what Penn State fans are thinking about here is the backup quarterback situation for 2025. Does Penn State have a backup? Bo Prabula leaving makes certain fans feel exposed because 2021 Iowa is still close enough in the rearview mirror that it gives certain people nightmares. But you have Chuck Losey talking about the backup quarterbacks and where they are heading into fall camp.
I feel really good about them. I think they've both done a really good job when you're talking about Jackson Smollett, and then you're talking about Ethan Grunkemeyer as well. Both of them understand that they're only one snap away from being in the game, and they attack every day like that. I know that sounds like coach speak, but with what you would want to see out of a guy who is one snap away from leading your program, I got full confidence in both of those guys. Jax has rebounded tremendously from that knee, and you wouldn't know any difference watching him out here on the field.
Nate, as our resident knee expert,
Yep.
I have dueling thoughts in my mind. First off, when we have this conversation about the backup quarterback, it's almost exclusively talking about Jackson Smollett and like how much of a surprise he is. But secondarily, there is this how close they are and kind of the feel that they're both doing a great job is kind of how it is. But I guess from your perspective, what are you expecting from Jackson Smollett? What do you think of the praise he's received this offseason?
Well, first of all, I would like to distinguish myself as not part of that conversation. I've stuck with Jackson Smollett, mostly because I thought he made a really favorable impression in the first place when he first got to Penn State, and through that first year, he did enough to stand out, and so I think that's the fact that they got the same player back with more knowledge, but physically they got the same player back that they lost. I think is telling, right? It bodes well for Penn State. This is nothing against Ethan Grunkemeyer. He became the backup to Drew in that SMU game, like because there were no other choices, right? Like it was just process of elimination, right? Bo leaves, Jackson Smollett is hurt and out for the season, right? And so, yes, there's a lot of excitement, and I think that's warranted for Ethan long term. And there was a lot of buzz for Ethan last year, right? That he was doing things in practice that were good and bodes well for him and his future. But I do think there is more of a competition than people were necessarily from the outside anticipating. But that's good for Penn State. I don't see either one of those guys as a bad fallback, particularly in light of, how do I say this without offending? Like, Bo had some limitations long term that I think that these guys on a talent level might transcend a little bit in terms of as an all-around quarterback. So I do think that there is a future there for both of these guys, and it's going to be super interesting to see how they respond to each other in preseason camp, because I do think it is an open job to win. I think that there will be ramifications in terms of choices made by whoever doesn't win that job, right? Mm-hmm. Penn State has kind of avoided it. Well, that's not even true.
No.
No, they
always had the starter.
They've just had long-term starters. Like they have pitchers that go into the eighth.
But I guess Will left.
Yeah.
Bo left. Yeah. Everybody leaves at some point.
What's your
Tommy,
jump in here? What's your assessment of where things stand heading into fall camp?
Yeah, I think that they're very close. I think that it's not just lip service either. I've seen it with my own eyes. Like these two guys are pretty close players to each other. And I think it's remarkable that Smollett's been able to make the progress that he has. Like it's, he's well over a year coming off that injury, but it's still at the same time, you look at it and you say, well, if he's injured, he should automatically default be worse than Ethan Grunkmeyer. I'm not sure that he is. And I think we saw in the blue-white game, which is just a snippet, and I understand you can't take too much from that both of those were able to hang in there and throw some pretty nice balls, handled the offense pretty well. And honestly, that's what it's going to come down to. I mean, it's not about Taquan Roberson not being able to throw the ball. It's about him being able to handle the entire atmosphere of Iowa. It's about him being able to handle anything at all that came his way, unfortunately. And that's it's tough. And when you didn't have the talent to jump in there, I think Nate, what are you doing?
We have to like revisionist history this just like a little bit on behalf of Taquan Roberson, which is to say that 2020 was a complete disaster from a developmental standpoint for the program. They did not learn anything. They did not do anything. It was survival because of COVID. They weren't allowed to practice. Like there were serious impediments to his. Now, I'm not saying it excuses what happened in that environment completely, but like there has to be some context that this kid was not given necessarily the fair chance that you would have had otherwise, had it not been like the most bizarre circumstances in my lifetime. Your guys, like it's pretty weird what happened. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, it's a whole mess of things that led to that. It's never just the one thing, right? It's never just the moment. It's everything that takes you up to that moment. And Penn State has done a really good job of fortifying that and turning that around and making sure it hasn't happened since. I mean, Christian Veer beat Rutgers a couple years ago, remember? Like that's and he did it quite handily. So like that's kind of the stuff that they found that's the position that they found themselves in, that they wouldn't get burned, and they haven't had to go to the portal to do that, which I think is impressive as well. Like that's we talk about the offensive line and that culture and how guys haven't really transferred out or anything like that, but quarterback is as fickle as any position in terms of guys that want to check out the portal and see if they can get a better opportunity, because a lot of them, at this level can. But at the same time, like Penn State's been able to avoid that. Now, a big part of that is Drew is starting in his third year after Clifford started 7-8 years, whatever it was. And then Trace had a long string, and, they've always had these long-term guys that come in and start, but also you get Drew in 2022. You also get Bo in 2022. And then, you've got these guys that are on the tail end of what they're or coming behind those guys. I'm trying to figure out this formula in my head right now, but basically you got a long-term starter and the guys right behind him are going to transfer. And then you've got some young talent that are going to bubble up. That's what happened with the last couple of cycles. The quarterback recruiting and development peak at the right time, so guys don't leave early, right, to kind of find their position to play. I think that's a really interesting point, and how that goes forward after Drew Allar. We'll find out. We're gonna get into this a little bit more. I think we dived pretty deeply here on the quarterback conversation. We dove to 2021 Iowa. That's as deep as we can go. Yeah, and that's as deep as I'm willing to go. Splashing forward to 2026, like we were somehow in parallel dimensions. Where we have to be now, though, it's Fitz's recruiting updates. So we're going to talk about the latest of what's going on with the class of 2026. Big moment for On3 and Rivals, and the industry ranking and the class of 2026 all rolled into one. So we've unveiled here at Blue White Illustrated, as part of the On3 network and part of the Rivals recruiting network, the new way forward for everybody. And Fitz, just if you wouldn't mind starting there, we can then explain how things have changed and then talk about Penn State's class of 2026. So a lot of these things kind of interconnect with what happened on Monday with the latest recruiting update. So please, info dump for us. Yeah, it definitely not confusing at all. Now the on three rankings, now the Rivals rankings. Of course, we bought Rivals, and I've turned that into the recruiting brand wing of On3. So they've done an expansion to the Rivals 300, used to be the 250. So now you're looking at that under that umbrella. So if you open up somebody's page and you only see 3 rankings, there's a reason for that, just because there's only 3 services left. So our guys have gone over there, as combined with some of the guys that did some rating for rivals, and one big happy family now, I guess. We'll see how all that plays out. As we saw on the internet yesterday, everybody loves the rankings. It's great stuff, and nobody thinks that we're biased or anything like that. So that was a really cool outcome from that. Looking at the Penn State class, there was some movement there. I'm very curious to see how much continuing movement we see. The big one with Jackson Ford went up 62 spots. He was number 253. He's now in 191. It's interesting to watch the sort of meshing of some of these On3 and Rivals ratings, because you've got a guy like Jasir Rogers, who has always been very high On3, but he was also very low on Rivals, and now all of a sudden that's going to pump up his industry ranking a little bit. He's 185 at On3. He's always been around that area, so that's going to continue to come up, I think, as other people catch up basically on that one. So taking out, I think, his lowest ranking is a good thing for his overall thing. His overall rating, he's going to continue to come up. But Jasir Rogers, can't say enough about him, as I often say way too much about him. But not much movement. Kevin Brown did not make a change. He's still number 58 overall. Hey guys, it's July 15th. If you're getting up in arms about ratings, there's still plenty of football to be played. I think that Kevin Brown's going to end up in the top 32 players in the country. And I don't think it matters that he's not there on July 15th. So, and we talked about this before. The higher they get up, the more complications that come from the monetary side of things. So if you're a Penn State fan, you're okay with everybody sitting pat. Actually, if you're Penn State, on the coaching staff, on the recruiting staff, you're okay with everybody sitting pat. I think those guys will come up over time. So you're still looking at class, I believe, number 16 in the country last I checked, with these new rankings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Penn State players in the Rivals 300. You got Kevin Brown at 58, Messiah Mickens at 143, Tyson Harley up 16 spots to number 170, Jasir Rogers at 185, Jackson Ford 191, Pierce Peterson 200. He's the number 10 tight end in the country. He continues to ascend. Terry Wiggins is a guy that continues to ascend as well. He's still at 218. He was at 219 before in the On 300. So he's a guy I think that has really caught some eyes. And I think he can probably really help himself. I don't want to say more than anybody in the Penn State group, this group of 9 guys that are in there right now during his senior year, but I think he can continue to shoot up. I think I'm very high on Terry Wiggins, and he can continue.
He's a guy that had a lot of traits that was still kind of learning the position, right? 6'3", 205 at linebacker with the frame he has. If he puts it on film, like, the upside is obviously there, and if he's a 4-star already, I agree with what you're talking about there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those ones you can look at and you say, this guy has a ton of potential, and he did some really good things on tape as a junior, but if he can unlock it all and really take a big step forward as a senior, you're looking at a guy that's inside the top 200, maybe a top 150 guy with that frame. That's pretty encouraging there. Marlon Bright at 222, Matthew Lama at 273. So that's what I'm looking at for those Penn State guys right now. It continues to be a good group. It's no different than the group was last week before all these rankings went in. And by the way, these rankings were done at the end of June based off of all the tech changes and things like that. We just got them out this week. So pretty cool to see that converging. And I'm sure, again, it's the internet. Everybody's happy with it, I'm sure.
The part that, not to beat a dead horse here, but with Kevin Brown going to the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, being an MVP player, and then not really moving anywhere, is that a function of when the rankings were done? Is that a function of they're still just going to hold firm to want to see senior film? I guess I would be curious to see, like, he's gotten bigger. He's performed on the recruiting circuit. Is it, when you're saying you think that he's going to be a top 32 player in the class by the end, is it really just that's the process of waiting till the end? Like, you think that all the dominoes are in place, they just haven't fallen yet?
Yeah, I mean, you remember last year, he didn't play much. He had the foot injury, so he was out most of the season. So, like, the film that we rely on, the film is kind of what we rely on the most. And these camps are wonderful. And I think people get caught up in the sort of the roller coaster of it all. Well, he just performed here. He has to be bumped right away. But it's an overall evaluation. I think you see that. And I think he will continue to play really well as in pads, as he always has. But yeah, well, I think when I was talking to Charles, talking to Cody Belair after the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, it's, yes, we want to see how he reacts and how he bounces back as a prospect that's going to actually block people in pads, as opposed to these one-on-ones where you can take some of the stuff out of them. But if you rely too much on unpadded shorts and t-shirts stuff, and this isn't just a quarterback thing, then you're probably going to get burned. So they know he can play football. They know he's really good. And by the way, 58 in the country is really good. By the way, 3-star prospects are really good. Like we're in this freaking fog where we think that a guy that's rated an 87 is a bad player. Like, what are we doing here? Like, these guys are top of the top, especially when you're playing in a tier at which Penn State is playing. And they're pretty good. So just a sideways rant that nobody needed. I just every time I think of rankings, I just think of nobody's ever good enough, and that's kind of what we kind of come away thinking sometimes.
Any other Penn State recruiting news to get to today before, of course, we're going to be having, our show on Thursday, and excited to announce that we are actually going to have an interview on Thursday's show with Penn State commit for the class of 2026, Isaac Chukwara. Chukura. I did it again. It's literally the start of the video where we ask him how to say his name. Chukura joins us on the show. Of course, Penn State subscribers to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com can get access to that early. That's going to be coming out this week before Thursday. So you subscribe for just $1 and you'll get access to the site for all of our premium content, intel, and conversation, including Isaac's interview with Ryan and myself, which again will be public on the Thursday show. But if you want early access, we'll have it for you on the site. So Fitz, any other information, any other things that you found interesting from the weekend? Admittedly quiet for Penn State recruiting.
Yeah, we'll take that. But you're looking at a sort of a quiet period, which is, from a recruiting rules standpoint, that's the wrong thing to say because it's, you're looking at no visits when you're talking quiet period. But we're in a lull right now, and that's kind of expected. Penn State got beat up pretty bad this summer in terms of recruiting their top guys, and now it's going to be sort of a turnaround where you sort of reshuffle the decks, figure out what's out there, maybe try to flip some guys, and I don't really see a ton of that happening before the season, and then in 2 or 3 weeks, they get into camp, and that's kind of the focus there. But Penn State did offer Germantown, Tennessee defensive tackle Diju Ba. Probably messed that one up. So T. Frank, we're tied on pronunciations there today. But he's a Wisconsin commitment. He also took a Missouri visit after he committed to Wisconsin. So that's an interesting chain of events for someone that you could potentially label as a flip target, a guy that commits somewhere and then takes another visit. I'm sure he loves Wisconsin, but also, it's different type of story there. So Penn State will continue to evaluate, especially on the defensive line. You're still looking at guys that can play either defensive end, defensive tackle. Ba is 6'3", 275. He's going to be a D tackle. I think everybody sees that. I think he plays a little bit of edge at the high school level. But you're looking at these potential guys to come in and be the balls of clay, because we've talked about defensive tackle recruiting before. It's not easy. It seems like it might be easy to find the biggest, the strongest, but those guys get passed up. So we will see the athletic potential here. Deion Barnes has been talking to him for a while. And I know that Penn State fans are not pleased with how things went over the course of the last month and a half on the defensive line. Got some good players, but at the same time, yes, the what could have been is still out there. So they'll continue to evaluate. They'll continue to look at both of those positions. And Ba is a guy that, came up on the radar. I think it was over the weekend that he came up on the radar. So we'll see if he gets to visit. He can't visit until the season. Dead period, quiet period right now. So we'll see if he pops up on campus in September. I'm out of whack, so I apologize for that.
That's all right. We got to get to something else here, but of course, subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. And if you are watching this video, please like the video. Always helpful for us here to help us get the word out that we do good work and it doesn't suck. And that's what we're all here for, is to do good work and have it not suck. That'll be it for Fitz's recruiting update. Penn State camp is July 30th, 15 days away from now if you're watching this live or if you're listening to it on Tuesday. So it's time to get into the camp battle previews. I outlined 11 positions where there are camp battles, and we're going to the undercard here. So, we're having a conversation pretty far down. Of course, the top battles that everyone wants to talk about, I'm not saying don't listen because we're not talking about them today, but this is the appetizer, the appetizer. Give you a little bit of what we're going to be talking about over the next 3 Tuesdays. So lots of good conversation, lots of good topics. We already started a little bit here talking about QB2 earlier with Chuck Losey and him previewing where those guys were physically and as far as leaders. So I just want to start this conversation off. Fitz, you talked about in the chat how the conversation is about who isn't about who wins, it's about who transfers, which is what everyone's concerned about. But how important is this quarterback battle in terms of this season and the importance for, I guess, that long-term conversation that everyone's having in the chat where everyone just skips to the end? Like, what we do now is we don't have the journey, we have the information up front, and then we skip to the conclusion at the end. How do you view this whole process?
Well, ideally, if you're talking about a roster construction standpoint, you're hoping that we are having the conversation next July 15th about which guy is going to be the starter for Penn State. Like, and I know that like sort of these things come clear well before that timeline, but Penn State's going to keep them neck and neck as long as they possibly can, right? Like you're talking about keeping guys on, keeping guys on the roster. And I know people hated the Drew Bo who's going to start type thing. It was closer than you would think, but also, we all thought it was going to be Drew anyway, and it was Drew. But now you got 2 guys that are legitimately close, 2 guys that can legitimately compete against one another, and 2 guys that you want to have on the roster for the 2026 season. And given how portal windows are, given how things are, have played out around the country, this is sort of happenstance and kind of following along and how these things work. It's how do these quarterbacks make it? How does this quarterback competition make it as long as it possibly can for the benefit of the team? Like that's what I'm looking at right now. So I'm not sure who's going to come out on top. Like I said, I expected to be coming out of the season. I expected to be Gronk in the spring. Smolik really surprised, and I don't want to say narrowed that gap, but kept that gap very, very thin. Mm-hmm. And if they can continue to do that, that's great. The question that is going to come up is sit them down at the end of spring next year, and how close actually is it? Number one. And how close is it perceived to be by each competitor? Because that is the big question right now. It's like they want to start, and I have no qualms about that. Yeah, absolutely. You want a guy that wants to start, but at the same time, if you feel like you're getting slighted, and we've seen that in the past, if you feel like you're getting slighted, you're going to probably take the other option. So that's going to be all very interesting to see how this plays out, especially because if one of those guys transfer right now on paper, you've got Beckham Kritz as your backup for 2026, and that's not ideal. So we will see how this all plays out. But in the focus right now is you've got 2 pretty good guys ready to go that feel that they're in their position. Nobody is under the impression that they're going to overtake Drew. Like Drew is entrenched so far that these guys understand it, and they were recruited to that. What? Right? Yeah, I'm sorry. That was supposed to stay behind the paywall. No, they were recruited to be the guys that come after Drew, right? Like that is kind of how this all has played out. Even if James Franklin or Danny O'Brien or whomever was there to recruit them didn't say it, that was always the writing on the wall there. So I think that you're looking at the normalcy of what was expected coming out of these 2 guys when they arrived at Penn State.
So Nate, I've had this conversation various places that it's all well and good to say that these guys are neck and neck, and it's all well and good for these guys to be neck and neck, but somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. These are some binary things, and if QB2 goes into a game and QB3 does not go into a game, and suddenly we come out of September and you have a disproportionate number of snaps for one guy versus the other, how do you manage this battle throughout the season to make sure that you do have the best possible player as your backup, but also you still have 2 quarterbacks come December? When the transfer portal opens, because if as Fitz said, like perception, but also like perception is based on their lived experience. And if one guy just doesn't get any reps, how do you see anything otherwise? So I guess, how do you view not just the fall camp conversation part of this, but also the ongoing saga of this battle between Ethan Grunkmeyer and Jackson Smolik for that position?
Yeah, I think that they'll get plenty of reps in the preseason. I think it is Penn State's coaching staff's job to make a decision, and they'll do it based on data and a whole host of different reference points that they can draw for, like, that's what they do. You have to make choices. And so somebody will be the second string quarterback and will get the reps accordingly. And until they fall off from that performance, there will be little reason to see or think that the third is going to take back that job in season. I don't really see that. That doesn't mean that that's not what will be presented publicly, right? To keep up at least appearances that, and I think that there is some validity to the notion that, yeah, the competition does stay throughout the season, but not really.
Right.
Like, not really.
That's I think the hard part here is like,
you don't have the reps. You
Yeah.
don't have the reps in practice to give 3 as many as 2. You better have your first string quarterback ready to go. And you better have your second string guy ready to go.
But they did that in the spring, though. They had Drew in his own group, and then they had those two sharing those reps. And I understand what you say. At the end of the day, somebody's going to be the first person out to take the second team reps. But I also can see a situation where against Nevada, Jackson Smollett comes in to start the cleanup, and against Villanova, that Grunk can come in and start the cleanup. Like, I don't think there's a downside to that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. And again, like, this is just based on James Franklin's history and honestly, even position coach, because sometimes I get the sense that there's conflict there, that Franklin would prefer his position coaches to take out their starters sooner than they do. Like, is that your read, Fitz? Because that's my read. Is that he would prefer to go in those directions a little bit earlier in some of those blowout wins. But I don't see the available. You have a pool of reps, and in games, in practice, whatever it is. And yeah, maybe you go through, maybe you can get through the non-conference portion of the schedule. But I think that not making a choice is going to be hard for them to do at some point. Though I also am very much under the impression that, like, if they can avoid making a public choice for a long time, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they'll
James
try to
Franklin
avoid
would
that.
never announce who it would be 2025, and James Franklin would still not be announcing who the starting quarterback is between the battle between Bo Pribula and Drew Allar, if that were possible. Like, we went up to the very first, just up to the very first game, and like, the willingness or the want to make these determinations. Obviously, I'm joking. Like, a point, it becomes obvious. I do want to get to our next camp battle position, and this is going to be kind of a bridge between the two to have this conversation. We're previewing tight end 2 on the roster. I think from our conversations with the staff and generally our feeling about Khalil Dinkins as the senior leader of this group, he will be the tight end 1 to start the year. How all that plays out, we'll find out. But tight end 2, Andrew Rappelier and Luke Reynolds. Let me ask you a combo question here, Fitz. Is there a quarterback 2 / Tyler Warren package in the offense this year where those guys are taking reps from under center? Does that make sense with this group of players this year?
Yeah, it can work. I mean, you look at Luke Reynolds, his former high school quarterback. Now he's not confused Tyler Warren wasn't either, not confused for a college quarterback, and Virginia Tech did a little bit with Tyler Warren. Then they understood what was going on. But you're looking at a situation where you've got an athletic guy. He showed you some running skills last year at Minnesota on that fake punt, and I think that can work. I also have not sold out Dinkins taking some of the snaps like that, because this guy's a heck of an athlete too. Like, I think you look at the Warren package and say the throwing threat is there because he was a high school quarterback and Dinkins was not. But at the same time, what was the big threat there? It was him as a runner. So I think that I would not be surprised to see it. I'm not going to see it as much. And I think that that's potentially a positive. And the same way we talk about the Bo package disappearing from here, it's potentially a positive for this offense where they don't have to be as gimmicky there, but there will still be, given what we know about Andy Kotelnicki, some level of gimmick attached to it. Like, it's just part of how he does things. So yes, I do think there's that. I think that, Rappelier will get back and have a role. I think that that's the kind of the beauty of this tight end room is you got 3 guys with 3, I don't want to say distinctly different skill sets, but
they're unique. Yeah.
Different strengths. So I'm very curious to see how all that plays out. And you bring Rappleyea in as a blocker, and who can also catch the football. I mean, he started the first game of the season last year. Don't forget that. But also Luke Reynolds is kind of in a different boat where, yes, he is improving as a blocker, but nobody's going to confuse him for being Dinkins or being Rappleyea in that respect.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation where I would say we were very high on Andrew Rappelier's ability to play early in terms of his ability to block and the physicality, plus, good receiving skills. But as usual, Penn State's tight end room just keeps raising the bar of what it means to be a great athlete and a great receiver. So that conversation, how that plays out, I think is a big part of the tight end room. And it would be interesting to see, without Tyler Warren, how those target distributions change. Luke Reynolds not being a freshman, I think, is also important. There were some young guy mistakes as a route runner and things like that on film last year. Now you've got the ability to have three of those guys involved. I also wrote about, do you want to have all three of those guys involved at a high volume? This past weekend at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, taking a look at what was the most effective in terms of explosive play percentage from the offense based on personnel. Two or more tight ends or three receivers. And then the wild card in here was the two running back sets, which were a much larger percentage of the offense than I think even fans remember. We're coming down the stretch here. We're going to have flip to the defensive side of the ball and talk about just the defensive tackle depth. Now, on here it says defensive tackle 3 and 4. I do think that the top three have been outlined pretty clearly by head coach James Franklin, but this depth conversation at defensive tackle, Nate, I want to come to you. One of my observations from yesterday was that I don't know that I've met a human that more represents a perfectly rectangular shape than Owen Wafel. The dude is as wide as he is tall. It's unbelievable. Where are you looking for in that depth conversation of what do you think Penn State needs from that undercard in this camp battle perspective?
Somebody has to step up, right? I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. Obviously, Alonzo Ford's status, I think, is of critical importance there, right? Like, what kind of player is he when he got right? Because it's an assumption, and I think a fair assumption that he's number 2, right, to Zane right off the bat. Xavier Gilliam as number 3, and then figure it out. I think that. But again, I mean, I'm just taking public comments from Franklin in my interview with him this summer, but there is a confidence that the fourth will be whoever it is in the fourth will be filled by somebody who is capable and on a rising trajectory. It's just a matter of somebody winning that job, right? Like there's a lot of,
but also probably on a kind of a pitch count. You're talking about the majority of snaps going 1 and 3, and then the 4th, 5th, 6th guys might fill in to that 4th spot. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But like you still need it. You still need to have that. They can't.
Penn State wants to cycle as many of those guys in as possible. So having as many guys deserving of being on the field as possible is really important to keep the top unit as healthy and as fresh as they can be for, the biggest points in the season. And unfortunately, we're running low on time. So, of course, time management, not my strongest suit here, running the show. But we do have to get to the more important of these defensive line conversations, I think, to a lot of people. And, of course, to the scheme overall, which is that defensive end battle, 3 and 4. Again, Penn State wants to cycle through 4 guys, if possible, at defensive end. If they can't, they won't. But this defensive end room fits. You mentioned Zariah Fisher as somebody we shouldn't overlook. But the loss of Max Granville does present the opportunity for some of these young guys. Presents a bit of a challenge here to start training camp. Where are you going in terms of positioning these guys in your mind to start this camp battle with those young defensive ends battling for 3 and 4?
Yeah, if I were doing a depth chart today, I'd go with Jalen Harvey and Malachi Williams probably as 3-4. And I think it's kind of like that 4th spot, similar to the defensive tackle, where you're going to see guys work in. You're going to see even Mason Robinson, who seems like we've forgotten about, see him work in. Even Kemaju, the freshman, work in there. Maybe some Denai White, who I think is doing some better things right now, but also had a long way to go when he got here. So he's still making up that kind of ground. And it's extremely hard, I think, in Penn State's defensive end room to make up significant ground on the guys in front of you because they're pretty darn talented. So that's where I would go with that. It's tough to see a true freshman other than Kemiju stepping in there and being ready to go right away. I will say Deshaun Burnett's done a pretty good job so far. But you're talking about a room that is loaded in a sense, but most of the loading is redshirt freshman type thing. There's a bloat there at the bottom of that group from an eligibility standpoint, but also there's a lot of talent there. So which is pretty encouraging.
Nate, any final thoughts here on the defensive end battle to start training camp? Do they need one of these guys to turn into a legitimate number 3 and maybe even a situational pass rusher that comes on the field and provides some heat on the quarterback? Or do you think the top 2 are going to be good enough there?
No, I think they need somebody has to play there. Like they're just, you can't be their internal philosophy of 100% every rep. Like you can't play that. You're not going to see defensive ends. I mean, I'm saying this and I don't have the data in front of me to make sure that I'm not wrong, but like defensive ends aren't at the top of the snap count chart at the end of the year for a reason.
You don't want them to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's not, no, you got to have 3, 4, preferably 5 that you can play with and divvy up those reps. So yeah, they similar to defensive tackle, feel really good about Zariah Fisher and Denai Dennis Sutton. That's like a combo that they can ride with, and they feel really good about that. And then it's just sorting out what's behind it, but sorting it out with a confidence that what's behind it, even post Max Granville, is still highly capable and has a lot of upside that will show itself this season.
We'll have some more of the camp battles coming up over the next couple of Tuesdays. We've got a couple of offensive line positions, believe it or not, which we're going to preview next week. Of course, just say it one more time as we get out of here. Wide receiver. Just want to make sure our numbers spike before we get to the end of the show. I'm Thomas Ray Carr, Sean Fitz, Nate Bauer here on the BWI Live Show. Check more out. Have conversations with them at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Sign up right now for $1. Check us out. We'll talk to you later.